Fortunately, here in Nevada, we only have to put up with defending ourselves from the legislature for 120 days every other year. That makes us pretty fortunate compared to, say, our neighbor to the west. Many times we think that our responsibility ends when we cast our vote. We go out and we elect James Settlemyre, we elect Jim Wheeler to go represent us, and that's all we have to do. And that is to some extent true here in Douglas County, except the problem is that Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Settlemyre are just two people out of 63. They don't run the whole show. Our representative form of government only works as long as our representatives understand what their job is, and that is to represent us. And unfortunately, James and Jim are in a bit of a small minority, and we're affected by what every one of those 63 people does. And so we do need to keep track of it and to pay attention. We take and put these people in the legislature, and then we just sit back and wait and see what they do, and we think they're going to do right by us, and sometimes they just don't. And sometimes that's their fault. But sometimes it's our fault too, because we went back home after the election and we just sat down and expected them to take care of things for us. Next thing you know, we've got health care reform. Leaves us worse off than we were when we started. Or we've got sunset taxes that we're supposed to sunset twice, but they didn't. And we look around and we say, what the heck happened? Well, what happened is we didn't talk to our elected legislators. We didn't tell them what we wanted. But some people were talking to them. The government agencies in the state of Nevada are talking. They've requested $1.1 billion more of your money for the next 2 years than they got over the last 2 years. Typically, the history of the Nevada legislature, and it doesn't matter which party is in charge of it, is to go ahead and give those guys what they want. They're not the only guys that are talking to the legislators. There's a whole raft of people. You can go on the legislative website and look at them. They're the lobbyists. Those are the guys that are paid to be down there every day asking your legislators for more money, for more laws, for more regulations, because all of those things help enrich their clients that are paying them the money to stand down there and ask for those things from the legislature. You've probably already heard that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, those guys are down there squeaking every day, and nobody is squeaking for you. What we're going to try and do tonight is show you some tools to help you squeak. Because here in Nevada, it doesn't have to be just all about the lobbyists. It doesn't have to be just all about what the departments are asking for. Here in Nevada, we know our legislators, and we're welcome in that building to go inside and state our case. And if we do that, and if we do it smartly and wisely, then the voice of the people will get heard, at least in Carson City. So, over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to do a very brief overview of how the sausage gets made to start off with, because you need to know where you need to be in the process to actually get something done. Where can you actually have an effect? Where can you make something happen? We're going to show you how you can keep track of the legislation that's important to you. And because there's a lot of legislation out there, and not all of it is something that's going to be in your area. You need to know how to sift through all of that stuff and get to what is important to you. There is excellent technology available that our legislature makes on their website that we can use to keep track of what's going on. And finally, there's some ways that you can join forces with others here in Northern Nevada to help make an impact. So we'll start out with the process. There are several different kinds of bills that you'll run across when you are at the legislature. The most common one is simply a bill. And there are assembly bills and there are Senate bills. And those are the actual laws. Those are the things that we think of as the legislature passing. There are 940 of those proposed so far for this session. About half in the Senate, about half in the Assembly. There's going to be more to come. Lots more to come. Joint resolutions are things that the legislature uses to do one of two things. They want to amend the Nevada Constitution, or they want to call on our federal legislators to do something. James Settlemyre always puts forth a joint resolution asking for Nevada to assert its 10th Amendment rights and call for state sovereignty. SJR 15, which many of you remember from the last session, was the change to the Constitution to allow an increase in the mining tax. Joint resolutions are used to change the Constitution and to call on the federal government to do something. Then there are simple resolutions. There are Assembly concurrent resolutions, Senate concurrent resolutions, and joint resolutions. The concurrent resolutions are where one house or the other wants to do something. They want to recognize somebody. They want to say thank you to somebody, memorialize somebody that's passed on. They also use those to set the rules for each house. We don't need to get too involved in those things because they're mostly ceremonial or procedural. The only thing that a joint resolution says is that it's the sense of both houses. Again, these concurrent and joint resolutions not going to be very important to us. Most of the bills that are passed and signed into law by Governor Sandoval start out as a bill draft request. Bill draft requests can be asked for by legislators, by constitutional officers, by legislative committees, by committees that are active in between sessions, what we call interim committees, and they can be put into place by legislative staff. Legislative staff ones don't matter too much to us because those are normally procedural as well. But that is where a bill starts. Somebody has an idea and they say, I want this to be a law. They find a legislator to put it into the form of a draft bill request. That gets into the Legislative Counsel Bureau, gets turned into an actual bill. They write the legal language based on the intent of the sponsor of the bill. Then that bill comes back to the sponsor. It's introduced in the first house, either the Assembly or the Senate, and then those bills are assigned typically to a committee. This is the first place where we can start to get involved, is when those bills go to a committee. The committees will debate those bills in what's called a hearing. They'll have a hearing on the bill. Public is welcome at the hearing. Any member of the public is welcome at the hearing. You can state your case for the bill, against the bill, or you can say, you know what, I'm neutral on this bill, but I just think something needs to be fixed with it. The language is not quite right. And then you go and you testify. Typically nothing happens that day. Typically the bill is referred then to a work session at the committee where they may take a vote on the bill. Sometimes a vote is never taken on a bill. This happened to us a lot when we were in the minority and Democrats were in charge of all the committees. Committee chairmen have full control over what comes before their committee. Committee chairmen can choose to hear a bill or not hear a bill. They can choose to hear a bill just to make you feel good and then take that bill and shove it in a drawer for the rest of the session and never hold a vote. In the last session, you may all remember Assembly Bill 143, Campus Carry Bill. It was in the Judiciary Committee. Judiciary Committee had the votes to pass that bill and send it back to the full Assembly for consideration. They knew that they had the votes to pass it. Chairman Frierson did not like the bill, did not want the bill considered, and so he held the hearing. And a lot of you were at that hearing, and it was a packed house hearing that day. The public was strongly in favor of it. And then that bill just went in the drawer and it never got a vote. That's why when we see on the news these last few days and weeks, seems like months and years, this drama with the Assembly caucus and what's going on with the leadership, and it changes every day. And everybody says, well, that's just everybody exercising their ego. It's actually a little bit more than that, because whoever is in the leadership of that caucus picks those committee chairs, and those committee chairs are going to decide which bills are going to get heard, which bills are going to die. And they're two very different factions with two very different philosophies, and who occupies those leadership positions is going to make a difference to the rest of the session. So it's more than just egos at play. It's unfortunate that it's playing out in the press like it is, but it is actually setting the tone for the entire session to come. Once a committee does decide to vote on a bill, they can do a couple of things to it. They can send it back with a due pass recommendation to the House where it started. They can send it back with a recommendation to amend it and pass it. They can send it back with a recommendation to amend it and then send it back to the committee so the committee can take another crack at it. Or they can do two things. They can take no action, or they can indefinitely postpone it. And those are, if we have a bill that we don't like, that's our goal, is to get it to that point where it doesn't come out of the committee. But if it does come out of the committee and it goes back into the House of Origin, then the House of Origin will do a couple of readings. There'll be some amendments. There's a whole process here that I'm skipping over in the interest of time, Blaine and Jim. But it's debated, it's amended, and then it comes before the whole House for a vote. That's another place where you can be involved. After it's come back out to the House, you can contact individual members and senators and assemblymen that are going to be voting on the bill and let them know your thoughts and hopefully affect that vote. If it passes the House of Origin, then it goes over to the other house and the whole process starts over again. They read it, they assign it to a committee. It goes from that committee back out, if it's passed, into the second house. Second house votes on it. If the second house passes it, then that bill will go to the governor for signature. Governor has got 5 days to sign a bill. Doesn't count the day he gets it, doesn't count Sunday. If the session is over, the legislature is adjourned, he actually gets 10 days. If he signs or vetoes the bill in that time, then the bill lives or dies. If he does nothing, then the bill will become law, just by his inaction. Doesn't often happen, but it can. If the governor vetoes the bill, then the bill will come back into the legislature again. If a 2/3 vote in each house approves overriding the governor's veto, then the governor loses, the legislature wins, the bill becomes law. If it happens after the session, then the bill will come back to the next session to be considered. There's 14 bills from the last session that were vetoed by the governor after the legislature adjourned. Those will come back for consideration in this session. One of them is a pretty bad bill. It's Assembly Bill 440, which was originally same-day voter registration. It was passed, I believe, Jim, on a party line vote in both houses. All Republicans voting against, all Democrats voting in favor. Went to the governor vetoed it. It will come back to be reconsidered. It has been amended so that it's not quite same-day registration. You can now register up to the last day of early voting, but still a fairly bad bill. So we'll watch and see what happens with that. There are deadlines for these bills to get through. If bills do not make it out by a certain time, then they die. And on the back of the handout that you got, it gives you those dates. The April 10th, the 68th day of the session, is the date that it has to be passed by the committee in the first house. If a bill has been referred to a committee in either the Assembly or the Senate, and that committee doesn't get it out in 68 days, that bill is dead for the session. By the 79th day on April 21st, it has to be out of the first house and onto the second. And then by the 103rd day, May 15th, it has to have passed the second house or it's dead. And by the 110th day, or May 22nd, the second house has to have passed it and it has to be ready to go to the governor or it's dead. A bill can die at any one of those areas. Doesn't necessarily end up that it's dead. The Assembly and the Senate do have the ability to exempt bills for various reasons, too many to go into in a 30-minute talk. But there are ways that bills can be exempted and live a little bit longer than what these deadlines are. But they are kind of handy deadlines if there's a bad bill that needs to die. So definitely want to pay attention to those. The other dates that are on this calendar to pay attention to are your budget dates. You can see that budgets are worked on all throughout the session. By the 92nd day on May 4th, they need to start resolving the budget differences that have been the budgets have been put out before that time. They need to start resolving their differences so that they can have final budgets and the differences resolved by May 21st on the 109th day, because those are the last bills that will come back to the legislature. Those bills will come back, as you can see, on the 27th of May, the 115th day. Almost the very end of the session is when those budget bills will be introduced. But by that time, most of the sausage has been made and all of the differences are worked out. So the last thing that they always will do is that budget. So that is that's the quick and dirty of how a bill goes from just an idea in somebody's head to being an actual law that's going to affect you and me. We're going to look at some of the things on the website here, because the website is where you can find all of your information about the session. Not only about this session, but about all of the sessions in the past. Off on this side of the screen, where it says session info, you can get all of the recent sessions and then regular and special sessions. Down below, you can get all of the information you need on the Assembly and on the Senate. And on your sheet that I passed out on the opposite side of the calendar, down at the bottom, there's links to all of these, because I'm sure you can't see them from where you're sitting, but it will tell you how to find all of your senators' contact information, all of your Assembly members' contact information, and how to get a hold of those bills. Nelis, N-E-L-I-S, you'll find on the right-hand side, and that is where literally all of the information appears that you're going to use during the session. All of the bills are listed in a section. All of the budgets are listed in a section. At the moment, there is nothing in the budgets area because there are no budgets. As of yet, nothing has been introduced. We'll hear the first word about those budgets with the governor's address next week. Under bills, though, there are a number. I said there were 940 bill draft requests out there. Just about 200 of them have been turned into bills so far. 93 assembly bills and 93 Senate bills, strangely enough. And if you click on those bills, when you go into a bill, we'll pick John Hambrick's bill, AB2 here. You can find out everything that's going on with that bill. You know who sponsored it. In this case, it's Assemblyman Hambrick. It will give you a brief title about what it is. It authorizes the possession of a weapon and a vehicle on the property of certain schools or child care facilities. If the summary and the title don't tell you anything, which oftentimes they do not, there is a link to the text of the bill, and you can see the exact text of the bill as it was introduced. As this bill moves through the process, it will maybe get amended along the way, and on text you will have the ability to see all of the amendments that have happened to that bill. There have not been, of course, any votes yet on this bill, but after the bill has been voted on the floor, you'll see the votes, and it'll be by name, so that you know who voted for the bill, who voted against the bill. The list of meetings is going to be a critical place for you to be if you're interested in a bill, because this is a complete record of the meetings the bill has had, what has happened at those hearings, and it's also your place to find out when upcoming hearings are coming up so that you know to come down and testify on the bill or send some information in. Again, we're pre-session, and so many of these screens are still blank. Exhibits, anytime somebody testifies, they have the ability to put in some exhibits, charts, graphs, pictures, snide comments, and those will all be posted here on the exhibits page. So this is your home for knowing about everything that's going on with the bill. Back on the home page, the other place that you will use all the time is right here in the upper right-hand corner, and it's called Calendar of Meetings. Again, today there is not very much on this page because there are not any hearings scheduled. There's nothing going on, but we did have today a meeting of the Nevada Youth Legislature. That was at 2 o'clock. There was an agenda posted here. When you see a meeting, and whether it's a floor session or a hearing, you'll find agenda on this side of the screen, and you'll usually find view on this side of the screen, because everything that the legislature does is live streamed over the internet. So if you need to watch a hearing, or you want to watch a floor session or see what's going on and you can't make it to the legislature, all you have to do is call up on your computer the legislative website, and you've got the ability to watch it. A lot of times during the session, I'll have a couple of 3 screens going, because I'll have a Senate floor session and an Assembly floor session and different things going on. Right now we have scheduled a symposium on Common Core, which would be an excellent thing for anybody interested in Common Core to go down and get some information next Tuesday night. 2 of the top people that were involved in Common Core and are now opposed to Common Core will be speaking and answering all your questions. Governor's State of the State address, and that's about it. But on a regular day, there will be a dozen committee meetings. There'll be a couple of floor sessions. There'll be all kinds of things on this calendar page, and you want to keep track of that, because that tells you when and where you need to be. Now, once your bill has been assigned to a committee, the committees section on Nellis is very important. All of our Assembly committees and all of our Senate committees are listed here. We'll take one of the top committees, Transportation. And if we click on that, we can see that it lists everybody. Chairman Jim Wheeler, Vice Chairman is Jill Dickman, and it lists all of the members of that committee. So if you know that your bill is in front of a committee and you need to talk to those particular committee members, that's where you find out where they are, who's on that committee. When you're going to get involved in the process, you're going to, you can start at the beginning. If you have an idea for a bill, find somebody to sponsor it, put in a bill draft. Most of that's already happened. But when they get to a committee hearing, this is when the rubber really meets the road. This is when you've got a chance to get in and say what you want to do about a bill. The most effective thing to do with a bill is to go and testify in person. Kind of frightening for a lot of people, but it doesn't need to be frightening at all. Remember that here in Nevada, this is a citizen legislature. These are not professional politicians. These are your friends, your neighbors in Nevada. They want to hear what you have to say about a bill. It's a fairly simple process to come in and testify on a bill. The meetings are all held in the committee rooms at the legislature. If the room is like this, the committee will be up at the front of the room. Oftentimes they'll be on a couple of different levels. The chairman will sit in the middle. There'll be a table across the front, usually 3 seats at the table, and then there'll be chairs for the audience to view the hearing. Most of the hearings are also video conferenced to Las Vegas, usually to Elko as well, so that people in the far parts of the state can come and testify as well. All you have to do is know what you want to say, prepare it in advance, arrive at the room on time. One of the things that you'll see on all of these committee pages is it will tell you when they normally meet. Transportation happens to meet every Tuesday and Thursday at 3:15. Sometimes there'll be special meetings of a committee and you'll want to keep track of that on the calendar, but you have a pretty good idea from here of when the committee is normally going to meet. Appear on time for the hearing, and there'll be a sign-in sheet when you come in the door. Come in the door, sign your name, and then there's a box to check if you want to testify. If you don't want to testify and just want to observe, obviously you can do that as well. But when you come in, give your name and who you're representing, if anybody, to the secretary. She's usually sitting off to one side or the other of the committee room when you come in. Take a seat and wait for the time in the hearing when they ask for public testimony. And they'll take it in order. People that are in favor of the bill, people that are opposed to the bill, people that are neutral to the bill. Some committee chairmen will actually take the sign-in sheet from the front and they'll go right down the list and call people's names. More commonly, they'll say anybody that is in favor of the bill, please approach to the table and testify. So that's a tip. When you come into the room, you kind of want to sit in the front or towards the front if you can, because that way when they call for your time, you can get to one of the chairs first. If you don't worry about it. They'll go as long as it needs, usually. And so just wait for somebody to give their testimony, vacate a chair, and then slide right in and be ready to go. When you give your testimony, try and be concise. Do not repeat if somebody has made a point of yours already. You can just say, I agree with what Ms. Hanson said, and I also have this to say. Because these committee hearings, as you can imagine, burn up a lot of time. And the committee members appreciate the fact that you are paying attention and know that your point's already been made. Try not to waste time by remaking the same point over and over and over and over again. No need to be concerned or nervous. They will make it very comfortable for you. I have never had, in testifying before one of these committees, a bad experience, even with somebody from the other party. They are generally genuinely interested in what you have to say. Once you have finished with what you have to say, they may have some questions for you. If you know the answer to a question, go ahead and let them know you know the answer. If not, it's perfectly fine to say, I need to research that, I'll get back to you. They certainly understand that, and like I said, they are not likely to take action on that bill right away anyway. It's likely going to go to a work session, so you've got time to get your facts together and get them to them. If you are not going to testify, the next thing you can do is submit written testimony. And you can see here on this, right there in the middle of the page is an email address. There's an email address for every committee. If you want testimony to go into a committee but you can't or don't want to testify, simply write out your testimony, send it into that email address. It'll go on to Nellis, it'll be given to the committee members, and everybody will get a chance to see what you have to say. The last thing you can do is to contact the committee members individually. You can email them, from here you can wander down to Carson City and go visit them in person. Sometimes that's the most effective, especially if you know the person. Obviously they pay more attention to people that are their own constituents, but sometimes it is helpful to contact all of the members of a committee, even if they're not all your assemblyman or senator, just to make sure that your point is given to everybody. If you do email, there's a couple of things that you want to pay attention to. You want to be somewhat concise. Don't write them a novel. Legislators are very busy. And so try and get your point across as quickly as possible. Be courteous, be professional. If you're abusive, that only hurts your cause. There's no reason to be anything other than professional. And the big thing is to be original. A lot of times you'll see, and actually we see it more with Congress than we see with the legislature, but there'll be people out there that'll write an email and they'll say, click here and usually send me $1 or $2, and I'll be happy to send this email on. Well, I think Assemblyman Wheeler can tell you that when 400 emails arrive and they've got the same subject line and they've got the exact same text, those don't get very much attention because somebody didn't care enough to take the time to put down what they really think. So actually write an original email. It's actually okay to take one of those emails and modify it, put your own thoughts into it, but don't just cut and paste, because cut and pasting doesn't work. An original email, the legislators know that if you took the time to send them a communication, a whole bunch of other people did not, and so what you send them has more impact than just you, because they know that you represent probably 50 or 100 people that think just like you in their district. Give your contact information in the event your legislator wants to get back to you and get some more information from you, and be timely. If you contact somebody after a vote, kind of wasted everybody's time. So there are a couple of organizations that you can follow to keep track of the legislation that's out there. The Nevada GOP at nevadagop.org has a link on our website to legislative updates, and we will update that throughout the session with things that are going on. We're also extremely lucky here in northern Nevada to have the Nevada Legislative Affairs Committee. Carolyn Howell from the Carson City Central Committee and myself got together and put that together before the 2011 session. And those of you that are at the legislature testifying from time to time may see the Red Notebook Brigade running around the building, and those are the people at the NLAC. What the NLAC does is they keep track of every last piece of legislation, and they sort it out as to what's important and what is not important based on what's in the platform and the things that are important to the Republicans in Nevada. You can send on your sheet, there's an email address, nlacbillreport@gmail.com. If you send them an email, they will add you to their list, and they update their bill report at least once a week, sometimes more often, and that will keep you very up to date on what's going on and what needs to happen on bill, what bills are hot and what bills are just kind of on the shelf and nothing's really happening with them. I highly recommend getting involved in that, because we will continue to be updating that process as well all the way throughout. Also, if there's a bill that's on that sheet and you want to testify on it, then you can contact Carolyn or Peter in Carson City, let them know that you want to, and that way if something comes up like the Assembly Bill 143 hearing that we all went to last year, we were able to put so many people in that building that they had to open up separate rooms in both Las Vegas and Carson City to handle the overflow crowd and start teleconferencing that, and there is strength in numbers. There apparently was not enough strength in those numbers to overcome Chairman Frierson, but ordinarily, if that many people show up, it sends a pretty powerful message. So definitely stay involved with the NVGOP and the NLAC website. All of the NLAC information is on the Carson City webpage, and so that page is on there. Sometimes people wonder if they have to register as a lobbyist, and this is an important consideration. Anybody in Nevada can go and testify at a hearing. Don't have to register as a lobbyist, don't have to do anything. Just find out when the meeting is, go to the meeting, testify. You can go and talk to your legislator at any time. You're welcome in the building. You have to register as a lobbyist in one of two cases. You're either representing somebody else, an organization or another person, and it doesn't matter if you're being paid or if you're being a volunteer, you need to register as a lobbyist if you're going to represent somebody else. Or you're working for somebody and you're going to go down and testify on something that has to do with your employer and you're going to lobby on their behalf. Either of those two cases, then you need to go and register as a lobbyist, and that information is again on the home page about halfway down the right hand side. Lobbyist information, and that website is on your sheet as well. It will tell you when you need to register as a lobbyist, what to do to become a lobbyist, and there's a little training that you have to go through, some paperwork that you have to fill out. But again, if you're going to act on your own behalf and you're just going to testify on behalf of yourself, you don't have to go through any of that. So the last thing that I want to point out to you here on Nellis is what they call personalized legislative tracking. And I told you there are 940 bills. There's going to be 1,500 or more by the time it's all over. All the information that you need is in Nellis. You can go into Nellis and find it all, but sometimes it's hard to do. If you have a certain number of bills that you are interested in tracking yourself, Nellis has a way to make that happen for you. You go into the website and register. And they changed my password on me this morning. And once you are registered, which doesn't cost a thing to do, then you can go into the personalized legislative tracking page, and this tells you what's available to you. For free, you can sign up for an account that will let you keep track of a maximum of 10 bills, BDRs, and budgets. You won't get a daily email, but you can log into your account anytime and see where your bills are at without having to wade through all of the mess of Nellis. For $50, you can track a maximum of 25 bills, BDRs, and budgets, and I think you do get a daily email when something happens on that. So if your bill is scheduled for a hearing or your bill is scheduled to go to a floor vote, you'll get dinged on it, and so you'll know that there's some action that you need to take. So, and then it goes all the way up to where you can track an unlimited number of bills for $600, but you better be a lobbyist and making some money before you need to do anything like that. Most of us really are happy to keep track of a dozen or 2 dozen bills. So that is basically an outline of where things are at on this website, how you go about making your voice heard. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? Yes?
I'm just wondering, is there any advantage to registering as a lobbyist as far as, do you get any preferential treatment? Are you considered more, your perspective considered more valid?
I don't believe so. Jim, what would you say? Does having a lobbyist badge make your opinion any more valid at a hearing? I would almost think it's the opposite, but.
It really doesn't, but one thing you did miss, any one of my constituents can come and talk to me or come and talk to Senator Settlemyre without a lobbyist badge. If they want to talk to a different senator or a different assemblyman out of your district, you must have a lobbyist badge. Our door is open to you as your representative. However, Senator Kiefer or Assemblyman Hickey or whoever, they can tell you, guys, you're not in my district. If you have a lobbyist badge, you can do that. Also,
right.
Lobbyist badges are free if you're a veteran. I think it's $20, Jim, something like that, $10.
It's some minimal fee if you're not a veteran, just to process the card and the paperwork. But yes, very important point that Jim brought up. If you do want to talk to somebody other than your own senator or assemblyman, you do need the lobbyist badge to do that. So.
But as far as people in committees, no, nobody looks for their lobby badge.
That's like out in the halls, right? That's not testifying. Anybody can testify.
Anybody can testify, yes.
In the hallway,
yes.
It's not your representative. You need to have a lobby.
Yes, one-on-one. Exactly. Yeah, anybody can testify in any committee hearing on their own behalf without having registered. Any other questions?
I want to make a comment. If you have passion for a bill, either for or against something, you really can make a difference. I was really shocked. There were, in 2011, there were a few things. I'm a preschool teacher, and there were a few things that they were going to change, like how much continuing education I needed to have to stay in the field. And it was absorbent, and there was some major money behind it, passing it through. And in 2011, I believe that I single-handedly stopped that legislation, went all the way to the governor's desk, and because I called every daycare center in all of Nevada to call the office and call the senators and do what needed to be done, he vetoed that. Of course, it came back in 13 and it ended up going through because they packaged it different and changed the wording a little bit, but it really does work. And I will disagree with Jim. Testifying is terrifying. Cotton balls in your mouth. It's worth it. It's totally utterly worth writing down your thoughts, sitting at that table, turning on the microphone, and speaking to the, and, you know, and you can make a difference. So that's what I need to say.
Truly, she's not a plant, but but what she says is true. That is one of the great things about Nevada is that we all have the opportunity to make a difference. And it doesn't matter who you are or what you do for a living or any of that. It doesn't matter how much money you gave to somebody in their campaign. You can go into that building because it's your building and make your opinion heard. And if we do that, then things can happen. Passionate testimony on a bill, Richard Bringman, if you've ever seen him testify on a Second Amendment bill, you know that it has an effect, and land use and everything else. So if you've been concerned and worried about getting involved, if there's something that's important to you, don't be concerned. Let us know and we'll help you get prepared and get you through the process, because we need to let these people know how we feel. They're our representatives. Other questions at all? Marco.
Once the schedule is set and the location for meetings is set, do they get changed? I mean, certainly it will be our responsibility to be aware of what's going on, but can we pretty well plan on it being at a certain time?
You can plan on the schedule being right. Occasionally, for whatever reason, a scheduled meeting may be canceled, and then you'll find that on the calendar. Occasionally, a special meeting may need to be called. And occasionally, they're called pretty darn quick. I can remember at the end of the session, again with Assembly Bill 143, they would call for a meeting, and let's just go walk to the back of the floor and have a meeting at the back of the floor. So behind the bar is exactly what that's called. And it's not like being behind the bar or anything fun like that. It's just a sudden meeting, and if you're not there paying attention, things can happen without knowing it. But generally the schedule is a good starting place, and there can be changes along the way. Be aware. Wes.
Is it correct that if you're registered as a I just missed it. As a lobbyist, then you're not allowed down on the floor with your representative?
You are not allowed to have your lobbyist badge on when you are on the floor, and you're not allowed to act as a lobbyist. Okay. You're strictly observing, which you're supposed to be doing when you're down on the floor with your representative anyway. Right. But no lobbyist badge on the floor, is my understanding.
Yeah, there's also something called legislative time you might want to tell them about. Legislative time is when I get around to it. Okay? You'll see a meeting that is scheduled for 8 a.m. If the chairman doesn't show up till 9, the meeting doesn't start till 9. You'll see also a lot of times, like on some of the Tuesdays and Thursday committees, which are afternoon committees, transportation, for instance, is supposed to start at 3:15. Yet most of the members on that committee are on natural resources, which started at 1. And if that runs over, transportation is not going to start till 4. So don't get discouraged that we didn't start on time. We're trying to pack everything into 120 days. So it's going to start a little late, it's going to start a little late. That's legislative time. That meeting started at 3:15, and then started at 5.
And if you were ever planning on a floor session starting on time, that's probably a huge mistake. I'm not sure I've ever seen a floor session start on time. You'll call it up on the screen, and half an hour later there'll be just people milling randomly around the room. Maybe the agenda hasn't even yet been posted. A lot of times, especially as you get later in the session, there's multiple floor sessions in a day. They have to redo a new agenda between each one and get it posted. And so it gets to be a little much to keep track of as you get into it. But legislative time is a very real thing. I always thought that I would be a great legislator because of that, but not for any other reason. So there it is. Sean.
Could you briefly touch on if it still exists? I don't know if it was part of Nellis or not, but I believe when we were working SB 221, there's a score thing, like the number of comments, pro and con, or the emails, and a real quick way to glance at the rhythm, where if it's something important to us and we can each reach out to 10 of our friends, we can literally turn the tide.
Sean is referring to a box that was on the front of the legislative website in the last session. where you could go and call up any bill and vote yes, no, and make a comment on that bill. And we know that the legislators paid a lot of close attention to that. I did not see it on the website yet this year. I don't know if it's gone away, coming back. It's just not there because there are no bills.
It should be back.
Okay, good. So public opinion poll is the official name of it. All you need to do is, it's right on the front page usually. Last session it was down at the bottom in the center, very easy to find. And if there's a bill that you just want to make a quick vote on, and like Sean says, then send it off to 10 friends and say, hey, go vote on this. They pay close attention to that. When you've got a bill like SB 221 that was background checks, and thousands and tens of thousands of people are against it and only a few hundred are in favor, it makes an impression. Ginger.
I just want to ask, this calendar that you've shown us for the 120 days doesn't skip weekends. So are you saying that the legislature operates full-time, no weekends off, that the legislators just go every single day for 120 days?
No, Jim would tell you that they work 8 days a week, but that's really only true at the end of the session. There actually are some days off early on, but at the end of the session, it often is 7 days a week, 7 in the morning until well after midnight. If you're going to try and follow what these guys are doing, you're not going to sleep very much in the last 30 days of the session. So.
But the 120 days counts the weekend days as
Yes.
part of the 120 days.
Yeah, it does.
It does that in case we need to do something on the weekends, like the last month or so. In the first couple months, usually weekends are off. But if there needs to be a Saturday session or a Sunday session, it is done. You're working.
And by that time, you're not getting paid anymore. So you're doing it for free. Yeah. So,
For 60 days.
yeah. Any other questions at all? All right. Seeing none, I yield my time, which is probably over anyway.